It started years before the War of the Five Kings, long before Catelyn's eyes narrowed at Arya's dirt-stained clothes and Bran's voice rang with childish pride. While Sansa sat with Septas, learning the grace of proper lady, Arya was supposed to chase cats and spar with wooden swords. But Ned, he saw something different. He saw Lyanna, not the romantic ghost that haunted Robert Baratheon, but the wildfire behind her eyes, the one that disobeyed, defied, and danced with death. He remembered how Lyanna screamed at injustice louder than any lord dared, and how her fire had led to war. So when Arya spat at embroidery and asked to learn words instead of needlework, he didn't scold her. He summoned Maester Luwin, not to teach her letters, but laws. Arya was only 9 when she first heard the phrase small council. She misheard it as a small cowcell and rolled her eyes. But by the next year, she could recite the feudal customs of the North and list every bannerman's sigil from memory. While Sansa memorized court dances, Arya memorized the cost of war, grain by grain, man by man. And when Catelyn found her in Ned's solo one night, poring over old Raven messages, she didn't see a future Lady of Winterfell. She saw defiance, rebellion. She is not meant for this, Catelyn said. And yet she listens, Ned replied, voice cool as northern frost. She asked the questions no one dares. You are training her like Robb. No, Ned said, I'm training her like me. By the time King Robb arrived with his golden entourage and his heavy, poisoned crown, Arya was no longer a child lost in shadows. She knew the stories behind each smile. She saw the politics swirling behind every toast. When Sansa gushed about Queen Cersei's grace, Arya whispered to Ned, she lies with her eyes. I don't trust her. Ned didn't scold her. He nodded. Later that night, in a secret letter to Howland Reed, he wrote, Arya sees truth where the rest see beauty. If I fall, the North must rise behind her. Now here's where it gets insane. Imagine Arya, not as a faceless girl, but as a future warden of the North. Imagine her watching Littlefinger with a blade hidden not in her hand, but in her mind. When Ned was arrested, when Joffrey screamed for his head, Arya didn't run blindly. She didn't cower. She remembered everything her father had told her. Not just swordplay, not just vengeance, but the North, the land, the people. She escaped not just with Syrio's help, but with knowledge. She vanished not to survive, but to plan. 3 weeks later, ravens flew to every bannerman of the North. They bore no Stark sigil, only words. The wolf still watches. Trust no southern tongue. The North is not broken. The maesters dismissed it as a rumor. Cersei laughed. But in Winterfell, Maester Luwin paled. Only Arya knew those words. Only Ned had written them, once, in his will, should Winterfell fall into enemy hands. And here's where it gets even crazier. Because Arya didn't go to Bravos. She didn't train to become no one. She trained to become everyone the North needed. She crossed the Riverlands dressed as a boy, hid in shadows, learned from mercenaries, thieves, soldiers, not just how to kill, but how to command, how to bend loyalty not through fear, but through silent example, like her father, but colder, sharper. By the time Robb was crowned king in the North, Arya had infiltrated his war camp, unknown, unseen, but not to whisper poison in ears, to test him, and he failed. Robb, driven by honor but blinded by love, refused to listen to the warnings left in the bloodied tent. The phrase will betray you, a note said. The South knows no for steel. He didn't listen. Arya disappeared again. And at the Red Wedding, when blood ran like rain, Arya didn't scream. She didn't cry. She took names. Hold up. Just take that in for a second. Because this changes everything. If Arya had been trained to rule instead of Sansa, she wouldn't have waited in the shadows. She wouldn't have taken orders from lords who stabbed her house in the back. She would have rewritten the board. When the Boltons took Winterfell, they expected to burn banners and break bones. What they didn't expect was a silent network of northern loyalists answering to one girl, faceless, nameless, but carrying the voice of the true North. And one morning, as Ramsay fed his dogs and licked blood from his lips, a single raven landed outside his kennel. Its scroll read, "You hold bricks. not roots. That night, the dogs turned on him. No one saw who unlocked their cages. But one of the kennel boys swore he saw a girl standing by the kennels, whispering something soft before vanishing into the mist. Okay, pause right here. You're probably wondering, where the hell is Sansa in all this? Well, here's the twist. Sansa still ends up in King's Landing, still suffers, still learns, but instead of returning to the north and rising through trauma, she returns to face Arya. And what happens next might be one of the most intense Stark confrontations ever. Want to see what goes down between the two Stark sisters, one hardened by court and the other by shadow? Let's keep going. Sansa arrived at Winterfell with snow in her hair and steel in her eyes. But the castle didn't open for her with warmth. It watched her, cold, calculating, as if the walls themselves remembered betrayal. Arya stood atop the battlements when Sansa entered. No words were spoken, no hugs exchanged. Just two sisters, once torn apart by war and fate, now facing each other like queens of opposing realms. You came back, Arya said, voice low, steady. Sansa gave a nod. I had nowhere else. You always had a choice, Arya replied. You just never chose the north. The words stung sharper than any blade, but Sansa didn't flinch. And what have you chosen, Arya? Vengeance? Shadows? I heard you disappeared. I heard you were dead. Dead girls don't take back castles, Arya said flatly. What neither of them said was what they both knew. Winterfell wasn't big enough for two rulers. One had studied lords and lies. The other had studied ghosts and steel. Now here's where it gets brutal. The northern lords arrived within days. One by one, some drawn by Sansa's name, others by whispers of the ghost who killed Bolton men in their sleep. They expected to swear fealty, to declare one Stark the rightful ruler. Instead, they found two women sitting side by side. Arya didn't wear a crown. She didn't wear a dress. She wore black leathers, boots stained with blood, and a dagger strapped to her thigh. Sansa wore wolf gray, her hands folded, her voice soft but commanding. Then the lords asked, "Who speaks for Winterfell?" And that's when the real game began. "You speak of diplomacy," Arya said, voice echoing across the hall, "while the South laughs at our names. They murdered our father, our mother, our brother, and now they think we'll kneel? Your vengeance doesn't make you a ruler," Sansa said calmly. "The North needs more than ghosts and knives. It needs peace, trade, food, unity." Arya smirked. "The North needs fear, respect, blood that answers blood." The room was split. Some nodded to Sansa's logic. Others murmured in approval of Arya's fire. Lord Glover stood. "And who decides?" Arya rose slowly. "Let the North decide." And so it began. Not a war. A test. Okay, this is where things get wild. Arya challenged Sansa, not with swords, but with the weight of leadership. A month of trials. 3 tests. First, justice. A captured traitor, once loyal to the Boltons, now begged for mercy. He claimed he had no choice. He was protecting his family. Sansa leaned toward mercy, arguing that fear breeds rebellion. Arya said fear prevents it. Sansa granted the man land to work and his life. Arya slit his throat the next morning. "Mercy doesn't erase what he's done," Arya whispered. "And fear doesn't starve his children," Sansa snapped back. Second test. The people. A famine crept from the mountain villages. Too many mouths, not enough grain. Arya offered rationing, cold and strict. Sansa proposed alliance, trading with White Harbor for saltfish in exchange for wool. The lords leaned towards Sansa. Arya said nothing. That night, Arya vanished again. 2 days later, bandits that had been hijacking food caravans near the Wolfswood were found hanging from trees, carved with House Stark's sigil across their chests. The grain reached Winterfell, and the North whispered, "Lady Arya is watching." Third test, loyalty. Littlefinger returned. Yes, you heard that right. He arrived with gold, with smiles, and with a southern tongue promising peace. He offered coin knights and a Ford Baratheon seal, granting Sansa full rule of the North. Arya wanted him dead the moment he opened his mouth. Sansa hesitated. You don't trust him, Arya said, but you need him. I trust his usefulness, Sansa replied. That's how father died. Pause for a second, because this moment, it's everything. This is where Sansa Stark, the girl who once dreamed of being queen, stands face to face with the cost of politics. Arya, shaped by death, by fire, by lies and knives, stood at the edge of choice. And Sansa? She made it. She handed Arya the dagger. Do what I won't, she said. Arya smiled. That night, Littlefinger died with a whimper, his final words swallowed by a Stark blade. The North didn't weep. The trials ended not with a victor, but with silence. Sansa called a final council, and this time she did something no one expected. She stood, faced Arya, and knelt. The North needs more than politics. It needs teeth, fire, fear, and I have none of that without you. Arya stared, and then knelt too. I'm not meant to rule alone. And just like that, the North got something it never had. 2 queens, one of ice, the other of shadow, one to hold the crown, the other to guard the blade. Together, they ruled not through mercy nor blood, but through balance. The North didn't just rise. It became untouchable. But that's not the end, because whispers were growing in the South of a new threat, of dragons returning, and a queen marching north. But this time, Arya wasn't hiding in shadows. She was waiting at the wall, with steel in her hand and a plan in her mind. The raven arrived before the snow, a single scroll, sealed in black wax, delivered to Winterfell's great hall by a rider whose horse collapsed moments after arrival. The message was brief. The Dragon Queen marches north, with fire, with fury, with purpose. Arya read it first. Sansa read it second. Neither spoke, not at first, because both of them knew this wasn't a warning. It was a declaration. Okay, pause for a second and ask yourself, what happens when a dragon meets a wolf that doesn't run? Arya Stark didn't flinch at the mention of Daenerys Targaryen. She didn't shudder like the small folk. She didn't gather gold, nor did she whisper for mercy. She summoned Gendry. Yes, Gendry Waters, bastard of Robert Baratheon, blacksmith of royal blood. He wasn't a secret anymore, because Arya had plans that needed more than steel. They needed legitimacy. You know who you are, she told him. I know what I am, he replied. Then let the Dragon Queen know it too. Meanwhile, Sansa called her own council. Maesters, lords, scouts, everyone who mattered. We have weeks, she told them, not months. Lord Manderley frowned. We don't have enough swords, nor archers, if her dragons fly. Then we fight in the shadows, Arya said, stepping into the room. Not on open fields, not like fools. Sansa turned to her, and if the shadows fail, Arya's face didn't move. Then I make sure they die before we do. Here's where things start to spiral. Daenerys wasn't just marching. She was conquering. After the fall of Cersei, after the ashes of King's Landing settled, she had crowned herself protector of the realms of men. Her armies had doubled. Unsullied, Dothraki mercenaries and southern houses terrified of dragons. Tyrion was dead, executed for treason. Jon Snow was missing. Rumors said he fled north, but no one could confirm it. Daenerys didn't care. The North hadn't bent the knee, so she would take it. By flame, by fear, by fire. Arya prepared differently. She didn't build walls. She built silence. Villages were emptied, moved underground or hidden. Paths through the Wolf's Swoon were littered with false trails, collapsed bridges, and traps soaked in wildfire. Courtesy of old Lannister stocks, no one ever expected the Starks to find. Arya made sure Winterfell didn't just stand. It disappeared. If Daenerys wanted to conquer the North, she'd have to fight ghosts. Now here's the twist you didn't see coming. Arya didn't plan to kill Daenerys. She planned to break her, and she had just the thing. When Daenerys finally arrived, with Drogon roaring above, casting firelight on the snow, she was met not with swords, but a raven, delivered by a child. It read, I am no queen. I am no one. But you killed those who could have been. Come see what remains. Daenerys should have ignored it. She didn't. The letter led her to the crypts beneath Winterfell. And there, deep within cold stone and broken memory, stood Arya. No armor, no army, just her, and a statue of Ned Stark. You burned King's Landing, Arya said. I ended tyranny, Daenerys replied. You murdered children. They would have grown into enemies. You sound like Ares. Those words hit harder than dragon fire. Daenerys stepped forward. You think I fear you? I have dragons, armies. You have shadows and ghosts. Arya didn't blink. I have the North. And then it happened. The crypt shook, not from Drogon's roar, but from what stood behind Daenerys. Jon Snow, covered in snow, dressed in black, ghost at his side, alive, watching. Wait, wait! Just breathe for a second. Because this changes everything. Jon had disappeared not because he fled, but because Arya had hidden him, used her network to smuggle him beyond the wall, to heal, to learn, to become more than just a bastard with a broken heart. And now he stood, torn between blood and duty. Arya wants you dead, Daenerys hissed. Jon's voice was hoarse. Arya wants peace. Peace? You would kneel. Jon looked at Arya, and Arya nodded, but not at Daenerys, at Jon. She trusts you, Arya said, but don't mistake that for mercy. Daenerys ordered Drogon to burn the crypts, but nothing happened, because Drogon wasn't outside. He was gone, flown, vanished, taken, by Bran. Yes, you read that right. Arya had reached out to her brother, the one they all forgot, the one who saw through time, the one who whispered into Drogon's mind and turned fire into silence. That night, the army of Daenerys Targaryen was broken without a sword drawn. Her men defected, her dragon left her, her claim shattered. And Arya, she didn't kill her. She banished her to Dragonstone, alone. But Arya's work wasn't done, because Sansa had plans of her own. A queen alone inspires fear, she said. But two, that makes the realm afraid to act. Arya raised an eyebrow. So you still want to rule? Sansa smiled. You already are. And just when the North began to heal, the wall shattered, not with ice, but with screams, because the White Walkers hadn't been destroyed. They had been watching, waiting, and the girl who had once been trained to rule in shadows would have to become the sword that stood between winter and the world. The wind that blew through Winterfell wasn't just cold, it carried voices, not whispers of men, but echoes of the dead. Arya stood atop the battlements again, the same place she watched Sansa ride into Winterfell months before. But this time, she didn't watch for banners or dragons. She watched for silence. That thick, unnatural kind. The kind that comes before a nightmare returns. A raven had come at dawn, but no sigil marked the parchment, only a single sentence. The wall is broken. The dead walk again. Wait, hold up. What? Yeah, you heard right. The Night King was dead. Arya made sure of that. But death has a way of remembering what the living forget. And what no one knew, not Jon, not Bran, not even Melisandre, was that the Night King was never the source. He was a creation. And what made him still waited, deep in the far north, far beyond the shattered wall. Sansa didn't panic, but she didn't speak either. Arya did. We strike first. We don't even know what we're striking, Sansa said. Arya stepped forward, her voice ice cold. That's never stopped the dead. Jon volunteered without being asked. He had seen the end once before. He wouldn't wait for it again. But this wasn't the Jon of old. This Jon didn't lead with hope. He led with fury. And behind him rode not an army, but a pack of wolves. Arya included. Now here's the twist you didn't see coming. Bran, he'd changed. Since warging into Drogon and vanishing from the world, he had become something else. Something not fully human. He returned to Winterfell not with emotion, but with knowledge. And he said only 3 words. The heart lives. They didn't understand until he drew it. a symbol, older than Valyria, carved into the ice at the site of the shattered wall, the same symbol seen at every massacre the White Walkers ever made. Not a warning, a seal, and it was broken. So what did Arya do? She went north, with Jon, with Gendry, with a small group of killers, loyalists, and believers. She left Sansa behind, to rule, to protect the living, because Arya wasn't fighting to survive. She was going to end it. The journey north wasn't like last time. There were no frozen lakes, no wildlings, no walkers in sight. Just emptiness. Too empty. Even the ghosts were gone. And that's when they found it. A city carved into a glacier. Massive. Endless. Dead silent. Jon whispered, this shouldn't exist. Arya only said, that means we're close. Inside the city were murals. Wall after wall. Painted in ice. They showed the first men. They showed the children of the forest. And then they showed Arya, kneeling before a heart-shaped tree, stabbing herself with her own blade. Yeah, take a breath. Because what the hell? Arya didn't blink. She stared at the blade she still carried, the dagger that killed the Night King, Valyrian steel, her hand clenched around it. Gendry said, it's just prophecy. Paint on walls. Bran appeared in the doorway. No, he said, it's instruction. Suddenly, the city shook. Walls cracked. Snow turned to ash. And from beneath the glacier, something rose. Not a king, not a walker, but the heart. A creature made of bones, roots, and frost. A being from before the world, had names. The source of the Night King. The beginning of the end. And it spoke, but not with words. With visions. Arya saw every death. Every Stark burial, every cold night where fire died in the hearth. And then she saw herself, stabbing Jon, kneeling before fire, burning the north. She collapsed, screaming. Jon caught her. Gendry tried to drag her away, but Bran just watched. This is why father trained her, he whispered. Not to rule, to choose. That night, Arya disappeared. Again, she left no note. No trail, no goodbyes, only a dagger, laid at Jon's side, and one message, if I return, kill me. Sansa didn't receive the news for weeks, but when she did, she didn't cry. She summoned every bannerman in the north, and she said one sentence, prepare for the last war, because the heart wasn't just waking up, it was spreading, and Arya, she was walking straight into it, alone. Not to win, not to survive, but to do what no queen, no king, no dragon ever could. Bury the cold forever. Arya walked deeper into glacier, where light didn't exist, and time twisted like roots underground. She didn't eat. She didn't sleep. She didn't pray, because there was no God here, only the heart, and it was watching her. She could feel it, beating, pulsing, as if the very ice had veins. The deeper she went, the louder it grew, not with sound, but with memory. Ned Stark's voice whispering in the dark. When the snows fall and the white winds blow, the lone wolf dies, but the pack survives. Arya didn't feel like a wolf anymore. She felt like a shadow pretending to be flesh. Okay, pause here, because this is where it gets unreal. Arya wasn't in a cave. She was in its mind. The glacier, the city, the visions, they weren't places. They were memories. The heart didn't just exist. It remembered before the first man, before the trees, before language. It was the origin, and it didn't hate the living. It pitted them, because they were born wrong. Too loud, too warm, too temporary. The heart had tried once, through the Night King, to bring peace, not war, stillness, silence. And Arya had ruined that. Now it wanted her to see, and it showed her everything. She saw the truth of the children of the forest, not saviors, but creators of monsters, desperate to stop man from cutting down their sacred groves. They had created the White Walkers as guardians, but magic twisted. It always did, and the guardians became reapers. The Night King was the worst, but not the last, because the heart could always make more, unless Arya stopped it. And the only way to do that was to die inside it. Willingly, she woke, if you could call it that, at the edge of a frozen lake shaped like an eye. At the center stood a tree, made not of bark, but of ribs and bones, covered in weirwood leaves and veins of ice. It was beating, and it was calling her. Back in Winterfell, Sansa stood before thousands, not just northerners, wildlings, rivermen. Even Dorne had sent scouts. Jon stood by her side, silent, cold. He had read Arya's final words over and over again. If I return, kill me. But she hadn't returned. Not yet. And every raven that flew north never came back. Except one. One raven. Its message. She is becoming. Bran was the only one who understood. He stood before the lords and queens and broken men. The magic that made the Night King was never destroyed, he said. It was only cut off. Sansa narrowed her eyes. And Arya, she's not fighting it, Bran whispered. She's letting it consume her, so she can kill it from inside. Jon clenched his fists, or lose herself forever. Bran didn't answer. He didn't have to. Meanwhile, Arya was already changing. She hadn't bled in days, hadn't breathed either, but she still moved. Her skin was pale, almost translucent. Her eyes? Black as obsidian. Not because she was turning, but because she was blending, becoming the blade that could pierce the heart's core. Not a weapon forged, a weapon sacrificed. And here's the cliffhanger you won't believe. Arya stepped into the tree, not around it, into it. It opened for her like a mouth, roots wrapped around her, slow and loving, like a mother's arms, like home. And as she was pulled into its core, she saw her family, every face, Robb, Rickon, Catelyn, even Sansa and Jon, all frozen in a single moment, all waiting to see what she'd do. And just before the roots reached her throat, she smiled, whispered, "Not today." Then she stabbed herself with her own dagger, the same Valyrian steel that ended the Night King. Only this time, it didn't just kill flesh, it shattered memory. It burned history. And for the first time in 1,000 winters, the heart screamed. The scream was heard in Winterfell, not as sound, but as heat. The ice in the walls melted. The clouds broke. The wind stopped. And Jon collapsed, screaming Arya's name. Because in that moment, the bond between wolf and shadow snapped. And then the sun rose, for the first time in weeks. But Arya didn't return. No body, no raven, no trace. Only a patch of ground in the far north, where the snow never falls again. And a single weirwood leaf, blood red. Sansa knew what it meant. So did Jon. Arya Stark had done what no queen, no king, no god could. She ended the war behind all wars, and gave the living a chance, not by ruling, but by giving everything. But that's not where this ends, because power never dies quietly. And in the South, rumors were spreading of a new fire, a new dragon, and a face that looked a little too much like Arya's. Across the narrow sea, in the ruins of old Valyria, a girl emerged from the smoke. She didn't speak. She didn't blink. She just walked, barefoot across molten stone, her shadow stretching long behind her. Her hair was white as snow. Her eyes? Pitch black, obsidian, not dead, not alive, but something reborn. The locals whispered her name like a curse, the ghost of the North. She didn't give it. She didn't remember one. But in her sleep, she mumbled words in the old tongue, words only maesters buried in scrolls had ever seen. And one name kept returning. Needle. Wait, hold on. This girl? She was Arya, but not the Arya who rode with wolves, who killed the Night King, who stabbed the heart and ended the long night. This Arya was different. Or was she? Because the blood midges of Valyria, the last of their twisted kind, had seen her death from across oceans, and they pulled her back, not out of kindness, but necessity. See, when Arya shattered the heart, she didn't just kill magic. She unchained it. Here's what no one told you. The world needs balance. You kill one ancient power, you awaken another. And while the North slept in spring for the first time in memory, fire was stirring in the ruins of Valyria, in the bones of old dragons, in the bloodlines of dead kings. Magic that had been buried under ash began to crackle again, and it needed a vessel, a mind strong enough to hold it, a soul that had already danced with death. There was only one, Arya Stark, but not as you knew her. This wasn't the dagger in the dark. This was a flame in the storm. And when she opened her eyes beneath the shattered towers of Valyria, dragons stirred in their sleep, real ones, the last. Meanwhile, back in Westeros, Sansa ruled a north of peace. But peace is fragile, because something strange had begun. Children born in the north were having visions, dreams, of fire and shadows, of Arya not dead but changed. One girl, only 5 years old, looked at her mother during dinner and said, "The wolf is burning, but she's not in pain." The next day, the girl collapsed. Eyes turned black. Heart stopped cold. Sansa summoned Bran. "Is she alive?" she asked. Bran didn't answer for a long time. Then, "No, but she's becoming." Sansa whispered, "Becoming what?" He looked at the fire and said, "Something that even the old gods fear." Jon rode south alone. He didn't ask permission. He didn't send ravens. He only left a letter. "If she's alive, I'll bring her home. If she's not, I'll end whatever wears her face." And with Ghost by his side, he vanished over the neck. Now here's where things get absolutely insane. Because this Arya, wasn't just breathing again. She was dreaming. Walking to the ruins of Valyria, she found a black blade, untouched by time, vibrating with power. It wasn't Valyrian steel. It was older, made not by man but by dragon. The blood mages called it the Fong of the First Flame. And when Arya touched it, she remembered everything. Ned, Sansa, the crypts, the cold, the dagger she drove into her own heart, and her final words, "Not today." But something inside her whispered, "Today." That night, she stood atop a broken tower and screamed, not in pain, but in fire. And dragons came, 3 of them, born of ash, bone, and shadow, not hatched, summoned, and they bowed to her. Meanwhile, Jon arrived in Volantis, chasing stories, each tale darker than the last. A girl with eyes like death, calling dragons like pets. A voice that made men kill each other just to hear her laugh. A ghost who walked through fire and turned it cold. Jon didn't believe it until he found the city, burned, not by war, but by choice. The walls weren't melted. They were marked, carved, with the sigil of House Stark, over a field of flame. And in the center of the square, a message burned into stone. "I am not your queen. I am not your ghost. I am what comes next." Okay, pause right there. Because this flips the whole world upside down. Arya isn't just alive. She's a force now, a storm wearing a wolf skin. And the world has 2 options, bow or burn. Back in Winterfell, Bran sat alone beneath the godswood, his eyes rolled back. He searched for Arya in the currents of time, but all he saw was flame. Flame shaped like a woman, walking toward Westeros, with dragons behind her, and a blade that pulsed like a second heart. He whispered only 2 words before collapsing. "She's coming." Now the question isn't whether Arya lives. The question is whether Westeros survives her return. Because fire and ice once fought for the world. Now they're the same person. And no one, not Sansa, not Jon, not even the gods, can stop what's coming. Unless Jon can do the unthinkable. Face her, kill her, or worse, join her. The wind in King's Landing carried ash again. Not from war, but from fear. People whispered that dragons had returned, not in the sky, but in nightmares. Black wings, a girl with no face, a howl that cracked stone. And every whisper ended the same way. "She wears a wolf." Sansa read the reports in silence. 3 cities scorched to bone. Ships melted mid-harbor. Gold cloaks vanishing in smoke. No demands. No words. just a mark burned into every ruin, a dire wolf in flame. And every raven sent south to stop it never returned. Bran confirmed it. "She's coming," he said again. But this time he wasn't calm. "She isn't Arya anymore." "She is," Sansa replied. "She's just what Arya became." Bran shook his head. "No, she is what the world made her, what it demanded. When she stabbed the heart, she didn't destroy it. She absorbed it. She's a memory of everything that ever died. And what does that make her now?" Sansa asked. Bran's voice was barely a whisper. "Judgment." Jon Snow rode alone across the Stormlands, chasing heat. Everywhere he went, he found the same signs. Abandoned villages, melted steel, and silence. But at Blackhaven, he found something different. A boy, no older than 10, covered in ash. Jon asked, "What happened?" The boy only pointed to the sky. "She came down like fire, but her eyes were crying." "What did she say?" The boy's voice cracked. "She said, 'I remember you.' Then she left." Jon knew then. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't conquest. This was reckoning. And it was personal. Arya hadn't forgotten Westeros. She'd remembered everything. Every betrayal. Every lie. Every death. Let this sink in. Arya Stark had become a god of memory. Not because she wanted to. Because the world demanded someone remember what everyone else wanted to forget. She wasn't just burning the guilty. She was burning the willfully blind. And then she appeared. Not on a battlefield, but in a vision. Jon woke in the middle of the night, sweating, shaking. Ghost snarled in the corner. And standing by the fire was her, Arya, or what wore her face. She looked exactly the same. But not. Something beneath her skin moved, as if memory itself was alive inside her. Jon drew his sword. He didn't speak. He couldn't. Arya smiled. "You still sleep like father. Restless, always waiting for a blade." He whispered, "Are you real?" She stepped closer. The fire didn't reflect in her eyes. "I'm what happens when no one else answers the cost. You don't have to do this." "I already did," she said. "The moment I killed the Night King, I made myself a story. Now I'm just finishing it." He stepped forward. "Arya, stop." She paused. "Then, would you stop me if I burn the Red Keep?" Jon stared. "There's nothing left there." Her smile vanished. "Exactly." The next morning, Jon rode north. But the sky behind him was orange, because Arya had already moved. The ruins of the Red Keep turned to dust, and atop the broken iron throne, what remained of it was a crown, melted, and a message carved into dragon glass. No more thrones. Sansa held council, not in chambers. On the battlefield, the North was at peace, but the South was unraveling. And the only thing every lord agreed on, Arya had become a threat beyond politics, a myth wearing a face. Lord Royce said, "If she's not stopped, she'll undo the realm." Sansa looked at them all. She's already undone it. They looked confused. She destroyed the throne without claiming it, burned the cities without looting them. She's not conquering. She's correcting. Lord Manderly growled. With fire. Sansa nodded. She learned that from Daenerys. And then the letter came, from Arya, delivered by a raven black as night. It had no seal, no signature, just 4 words. "Meet me, God's eye." Jon went first. He remembered the lake, where men died screaming under ice, where Viserion fell, where hope almost broke. Now it was still. No snow, no wind, just the silence. And her, standing on the island, waiting, barefoot, unarmed, but no less dangerous. Jon crossed in silence, and the second his boots touched land, she spoke. "You came." "I always do," he said, "even when it hurts." Jon stared at her. "This isn't justice, Arya." She turned. "Then what is it?" "Not this." "You think burning thrones is worse than sitting on them?" He didn't answer. She stepped closer. "I remember every name, Jon. Every child sold. Every girl silenced. Every family burned while lords toasted victory. They all say the same thing when they beg. What? She looked right into him. We didn't know. And then she did something Jon didn't expect. She cried. Not loud, not broken, just one tear, because the cost was still inside her. The pain, the sacrifice, the part that remembered who she was. Before gods, before ghosts, just a girl with a blade and a father who believed in her. Jon stepped closer. I know what you're doing. Arya nodded. It's almost over. You want me to stop you? No, she said softly. I want you to remember me. The way I was. He nodded. Then he pulled her into an embrace. And for the first time in what felt like centuries, Arya Stark held her brother. Not the weapon, not the ghost, just the girl. But the fire wasn't done. Because someone else was coming. Bran saw it first. A fleet, flying a new banner. Not lion, not stag, not dragon, but a sun made of fire. And they weren't from Westeros. They were from Essos, blood midges, followers of the flame, come to reclaim what Arya had taken. And they had a weapon, something older than Valyria, older than the heart, older than death. The final war is coming, not between houses, but between memory and myth. And Arya, she's not running. She's waiting, with fire behind her, and Jon at her side. The sky over gods I turned red before the ships were even visible. Bran saw it first. His eyes rolled white, warging through ravens high above a narrow sea. What he saw wasn't an army. It was a cult. Thousands, dressed in robes soaked in blood. Eyes sewn shut, mouths filled with ash. And at the head of the fleet, a ship carved from bone. No sails, no crew, only one figure. A woman, tall, barefoot, and her skin, flaming, literally burning, but not consumed. She didn't scream. She sang. In Valyrian, a song that made the ocean rise, then part, then kneel before her. Bran whispered her name, words not heard in Westeros for 1,000 years. The Flame Mother. Okay, breathe, because this is the end game now. This isn't about thrones or revenge. This is about what comes after death. The Flame Mother had come for Arya, not to kill her, but to claim her, to take the piece of the heart still inside her, to feed it, to finish what the children of the forest started. Magic, fire, ice, life, death, none of it was meant to exist apart. Arya was never meant to survive her sacrifice, but she had. And now, the world wanted to fix that mistake. Sansa prepared the north. Every bannerman called. Every sword sharpened. Winterfell became a fortress once more, not of walls, but of resolve. No alliances, no diplomacy. This was the last war. And she knew it, not because she read it in a book, but because the gods would whispered it. Even the old gods had gone silent, as if afraid. Jon stood beside Arya on the island in God's Eye. They watched the fleet arrive together. They said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. They knew they had one night left, and then fire would meet fire. That night, Arya dreamed. She was in Winterfell, before any of it, before dragons, before daggers, before death. Just her and Ned. He brushed her hair with quiet hands and said, "You never listened. You always ran where the road ended." She smiled. "I'm still running." "No," he said softly. "You're waiting." Arya turned, and he was gone, and in his place, the tree, the heart, still beating, still watching, waiting for her to finish it. The next morning, the Flame Mother walked across the lake. Didn't ride, didn't row, walked. The water turned to fire under her steps. Arya stepped forward. No armor, no blade, just breath and memory. The woman spoke first. Arya Stark, daughter of Winterfell, slayer of the Night King, thief of the flame. "I didn't steal it," Arya said. "You lived," the woman hissed. "That is theft." Arya didn't blink. "You want it back?" "I wanted to burn." And then it began. Fire against fire. Memory against myth. The lake exploded. Dragons rose. one from the north, born of shadow and frost. 3 from the sea, forged in the Flame Mother's rage. They didn't clash. They screamed, the kind of sound that shatters bones, that bends mountains. And in the center, Arya, standing on a storm of ash, face still calm, eyes pure black, not evil, not holy, just truth. Jon tried to reach her, tried to ride through fire, but the moment he stepped forward, the flame stopped him, not with heat, with memory. He saw Ygritte, Daenerys, Ned, every person he had ever loved, every one he had failed. It broke him. He fell to his knees, and Ghost howled, because Jon Snow wasn't meant to stop this. Only watch it. The Flame Mother raised her arms. The sky turned white. The dragons burned red. And Arya? She dropped to her knees, whispered something only she could hear, then stood and opened her chest. Literally, she dug her fingers beneath her ribs and pulled out something burning. Not a heart, a memory, glowing, beating, screaming. She held it up and said, "No more," then crushed it in her hand. The explosion erased the horizon. Fire became wind. Wind became silence. And then, nothing. The fleet burned. The cult turned to dust. The dragons, every one, screamed their last scream and fell into the sea. And Arya? Gone. Not dead. Not vanished. Just gone. Like a dream that ends mid-sentence. Jon awoke hours later. The lake was still. The sky was blue. And on the shore, a single direwolf print. Still warm. Sansa ruled from Winterfell. But no one called her queen. They called her the Steward of the Flame. The woman who outlived fire. The one who remembered the girl who saved the world twice. Bran never warred again. He said the world had gone quiet because it finally had peace. And Jon? He went north, past the wall. Alone. He built no castle, took no sword. He just waited, because maybe someday, when the world forgets again, when kings rise and fall, when thrones return, she'll come back, not with fire, not with blades, but with that same quiet smile, and ask, what do we say to the god of death? And he'll answer, one last time, not today,